So I want to invite you for a moment to think of a dream that you had when you were a child. Something you wanted to accomplish, something you wanted to be, something you wanted to do, a dream that you had. And I want to ask the question, do you still have that dream? Did you accomplish that dream? Did you hold on to that dream? Or did something come along and rob you of that dream? I want to ask another question for you to think about this evening. Have you had a dream as an adult, something you wanted to do, something you wanted to accomplish, something you were passionate about, only to see that dream wither and die? What happened? Who took your dream? Will Smith, a couple years ago, starred in a movie called The Pursuit of Happiness. Has anybody seen that movie? It's a beautiful movie. It is about a man who is trying everything he can to provide for his son. But in the midst of trying to provide for his son, he has this interesting interaction at a basketball court. Let's see what happens.
All right, then we're going to go set a bone density scanner. How about that? Want to do that?
No. Hey, Dad, go pro! I'm going pro!
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know, you'll probably be about as good as I was. That's kind of the way it works, and I was below average. Yeah, so, so you'll probably ultimately rank somewhere around there, so really, you'll excel at a lot of things, just not this. So I don't want you out here shooting this ball around all day and night, all right? All right? Good. Hey. Don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do something. Not even me. All right? You got a dream, you gotta protect it. People can't do something themselves. They want to tell you you can't do it. You want something, go get it. Period.
Dad.
See how quick that turned? He's a little boy he loves. He's trying to do everything for this little boy. He's trying to provide for this little boy. I love how the scene starts, right? Do you want to go sell a bone density scanner? Does that sound exciting? The little boy says, no, that doesn't sound like fun. So they're out there shooting hoops. It's this beautiful moment, right? And the little boy's yelling, I'm going pro, I'm going pro. And in the midst of the dad trying to protect him, trying to provide for him, trying to give him a better life, in 10 seconds crushes this little kid's dream. Now, this isn't about a child going in professional basketball. But this is about a world that we live in that often tries to steal and suppress and hold down dreamers. We live in a world that actively tries to kill our joys. We live in a world that actively tries to kill our dreams, to kill our aspirations, to kill what we want to do. You know, one of the things we use in the Reformed tradition, the Presbyterian Church, is the Shorter Catechism. And one of the first things it says is, what is the chief end of man? Like, what's man's purpose? What are we here for? And the very first thing it says is to glorify God and enjoy God forever. To glorify God and enjoy God forever. See, one of the things that we believe is that when God was creating the world and he was putting things together, he was enjoying himself. He was saying, it's good. And then he puts man right in the middle of the garden, and he puts Eve right next to him, and he says, this is very good. And God doesn't keep them separately. God integrates it and then takes what is good and looks at Adam and says, I want you to what? Take care of it, right? Enjoy the good. Take care of the good. And Adam gets to even participate in it. We're told Adam gets to name the animals. He gets to name the animals. All this is going on, right? God is being glorified, and we see this reflection that Adam is getting to enjoy it. You know, as Presbyterians, we got that first part down pretty good, right? In the way we do worship, in the way we do meetings, in the way we talk about theology. We're very good at glorifying God. We are really bad at the enjoyment part. We are really bad at the joy part. We're really bad at the dreaming part. We're really bad at the fun part. We're really bad at it. I often ask myself, why do we think this? Why do we do this? And as I watched and reflected on this film clip this week, here's what I think. I think most of us in this room have had that conversation at least once in our life as the child. We had a dream, and we were told we couldn't do it. We were told to make smarter decisions. We were told, right, to get your head out of the clouds. Now, some of us who are a little bit older, we've probably had that conversation at least twice. We've probably at one point been the adult. And the more I started to think about it, the more I realized that if we're being honest with ourselves, a lot of us at some point in our life have probably had that conversation in our head. Where we've taken the dream, we've taken what brings us joy, we've taken what we have a passion for, and we've begun to believe that it's foolish to pursue it. We've begun to believe that it's not worth our time. We need to be more responsible. We need to be more dignified. We need to be more like a grown-up. We need to be more like a grown-up. And here's the problem. We see Jesus, right, sitting around with other grown-ups doing grown-up things, ministry things, and people are trying to bring kids, and the disciples are like, hold up. We're doing important stuff. Keep that foolishness away from here. And Jesus, what? Jesus says, bring the kids to me. Bring them to me. There's something beautiful and pure about the joy a child brings to life. There's something beautiful about it. There's something that I see our children here at the church, my children at home, that I look at and I'm like, when did I lose that? And you think, well, Paul said, right? I once spoke like a child, acted like a child, but eventually you put childish things behind. But there's still a childlikeness that can't be thrown away. So what is this thing that God gives us? What is this thing, this thing that we talk about, childlike faith? And I would just like to say this. If you're passionate about something, if there's something in life that brings you joy, if there's something in life that lights a fire under you, that is a God-given, Holy Spirit-driven gift. And if it's God-given and Holy Spirit-driven, then it's worth your time. No matter how foolish it looks in the eyes of the world. When I was a senior in high school, there was a guy who came to our area, and he was a professional clown. He was a professional clown, and I was convinced after hearing him talk that I wanted to be a professional clown. And so I told my mom this. I said, wouldn't it be cool if I went to clown school? Now, I made 2 mistakes when I did this. The first one was I had just failed a history exam a week earlier. Mom wasn't real happy about me doing any clowning. Second mistake was I brought it up to my mom in front of church in the back, where she had shared with some people that I had failed my history class. I never will forget Mr. Mullinex, who was just a dear man, taught me in Sunday school, very loudly says, Michael Haddix, if you go to clown school, you're going to ruin your life. Get your act together and get to college. I gotta tell you, I remember what Mr. Mullinex was wearing. I remember what I was wearing. I remember where I was standing at the church. I remember the way people looked at me. I remember the ride home, my mom not saying anything. I remember in vivid detail. And the reason why I remember it is because that is the point in my life where I said to myself, it's time to grow up and get your head out of the clouds. Because I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. And at that moment, I felt ridiculous. Now, let me just pause for a second and say I'm on the flip side now, right? I'm not the high school senior anymore. Now I have kids, and even at 6 years old, right, I'm starting to say things like, pay attention, be serious. Do your schoolwork, because nobody wants their child living at home when they're 35 in your basement, right? And I know those people. But here's something that we need to remember here. If you have a passion for it, if it brings you joy, it's probably given by God, God-given, Holy Spirit-driven. The shift doesn't happen by saying you can't do that, but by asking the question, what happens if God gives it? What would have happened in that conversation at the back of the church if Mr. Mullinex had taken me aside and said, I know you love to entertain people. I know you're into puppetry. I know that you're into art. I know that you're into drama. I know that you're into performing. But here's what I want to ask you, Mike. If God gives you that opportunity, what are you going to do with it? If God gives it, what are you going to do with it? You see the difference in how you approach that, right? It shifts from killing a dream to pointing a dream back to Jesus. It goes from killing a conversation to beginning a conversation with how you're going to serve Jesus. It goes in this model that we call discipleship, right? Discipleship, a biblical view of discipleship, and I'm going to paraphrase and make some generalizations, but I think it's true, so we can argue about it later if you don't agree with me. I think a biblical view of discipleship is not taking someone and making a cookie-cutter Christian that would do good in seminary. It's not taking somebody who would fit into a mold of a mainline traditional church down on the corner. True discipleship is taking somebody for who they are, how God's gifted them, what they're passionate about, and teaching them that whatever they do to give that back to God. That's what discipleship looks like in the Bible. Really quickly, I want to talk to Psalm 71. Psalm 71, verse 17, the psalmist writes these words, O God, from my youth you have taught me, and I still proclaim your wondrous deeds. So even to old age and great hairs, O God, do not forsake me until I proclaim your might to another generation, your power to all those who come. I love these words because the cry isn't in power, hey God, give me enough time to make sure my children can be the same person I am. Give me enough time to make sure young people know how to live, how I live. It's, God, give me enough time that even as my strength's feeling right this next generation, I proclaim your might, who you are. This unleashing, right, of God's wonder into a generation without stamping out right who they are, what they're passionate about, what brings them joy. Will Smith in that clip says, if you have to dream, you have to protect it. And I would say that as a church, that would apply to us. When God gives us a dream, we have to protect it. But not just for ourselves. We have to teach this next generation how to protect dreams. Because if there's something that I'm beginning to see develop in upcoming generations, we have never overscheduled our kids more than they have been right now. They are overcommitted, they are drained, but they're smart. They're equipped to get good jobs. They're equipped to go to college, and yet there's a sense of hopelessness and dread and depression raising. Why? Because we've been more concerned about making them skillful than fostering how God has made them. And why is that? Well, basically because in our life more is caught than is taught. And there's a whole lot of hopelessness sitting in our pews on Sunday morning. Because we haven't protected the dream. We haven't protected what brings us joy. I think if we're being honest with ourselves, most of us in today's culture spend more of our time living our lives as the disciples would in this passage this evening than the children. We spend more time in our life trying to protect, right, our traditions, trying to protect the way we do things, trying to protect our own way of life, trying to make things right, very respectable and mature and responsible, rather than running to Jesus. So I'm going to close. There's two passages that I just want to give us as we seek to not only protect our dreams, to protect our joys, but also kind of reclaim a childlike faith. And the first one is be flexible. Be flexible and don't put so much stock in your dreams. Don't put so much stock in your plans. What do I mean by that? I mean, you may spend 5 years planning to do something, preparing to do something, and God may call you a different way. In Mark chapter 1, verses 16 through 20, this is how Jesus calls his first disciples. Passing alongside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and Andrew, the brother of Simon, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. They're doing their job. They're in the middle of their job. And Jesus said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you become fishers of men." And immediately they left their nets and followed him. Immediately. They had been preparing their whole lives, right? Being a fisherman was a trade that you learned. It was probably the family business. And he said, "Come and follow me." And they took all their planning and all their way of doing life, and it says they immediately left it and followed Jesus. And going a little further, he saw James, the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, who were in the boat mending the nets. And immediately he called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired servants and followed him. I wish there was more information on this passage. I want to know what Zebedee did when his sons just up and left. I said, if I had done that one time to my dad, I said, "Dad, if I had done that, you would have killed me." And he said, "How do you know Zebedee hadn't had a talk with Jesus the night before and said, 'Do something with my boys. They're driving me nuts'?" We don't know, though, but there was this family business, right? And Jesus says, "Come." And it says they didn't just leave their job. They left their family. They left their family. So be flexible. The second one comes from Matthew 7. Chapter 7, verse 7. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you. Ask, seek, and knock. How many times in our life Does the first sign of trouble or adversity, we say, well, it's not meant to be, and we just turn around and walk the other way. Jesus' own words encourages us, right? If you want something, ask for it. If you want something, seek for it. If you want something, knock for it. Because he says, which one of you, if his sons ask for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for fish, will give him a serpent? If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good things to those who ask him? You have the boldness to ask. I was reminded this week, I was out with the boys. We were driving back from a park, and I hear from the back seat, I know you're going to say no, but I'm going to ask anyway. I know you're going to say no, but I'm going to ask anyway. How about some dilly bars on the way home? And I said, you think dilly bars are good? We're going to stop at the gas station and get a thing called a Magnum bar. But see, I thought about that. My answer was actually no. My answer was no. No, you can't have the dilly bar because I'm going to give you something better. Now, that's a matter of perspective in our house. Some people don't actually think that's better, but my boys agreed with me. But I'm broken. I'm impatient. I don't always want to give the best things to my boys. I just sometimes just want what's best for my peace and quiet. But I was reminded, if I have that for my boys, how much more? Have you ever thought about that? In the midst of your life, in the midst of your struggles, in the midst of your adversity, have you ever thought that God just craves to give you good things? God just craves for you to have enjoyment and passion and love in this life? Why would you throw that away to have a childless faith? So the world can find you respectful? You've got to enjoy what God has given us and not let the news or social media or even that little voice in your head tell you that you can't have it or that God doesn't want it for you. From the very beginning, that's how God designed us, right? To glorify God and enjoy him forever. We're going to end before we do our benediction with a song by Rhett Walker, and I have been blasting it in my radio for the last couple weeks. It's called A Believer. And he talks about who he has and who he is in Jesus. And I would pray for you as a church that this would become something that you would think about. Who are you in Jesus?